Good afternoon. It's Monday, April the 2nd, and here's what's happening. Listen closely.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside. I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know.
New questions over these screams for help heard on the 911 call. Has science finally proven that this is not George Zimmerman's voice after all?
Does he look hurt?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So
you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
Plus, if Zimmerman was so badly beaten, why was a second ambulance not needed? The world waits for answers. We want to bring you fresh developments in the tragic killing that continues to grip the nation. NBC News confirms this afternoon that FBI agents have arrived on the scene at the gated community in Sanford, Florida, to interview potential witnesses to the shooting and killing of the unarmed teenager Trayvon Martin. And while we're still a week away from when prosecutors are expected to go to the grand jury, demands for justice are only growing louder, with new information fueling outrage that the teen's shooter has yet to be arrested. And once again, this weekend, grief and anger erupted on the streets of Sanford, Florida, driving thousands to march in Trayvon's name, denouncing his killer, George Zimmerman, who's claiming self-defense under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. But it's exactly those claims that are coming under further scrutiny day by day. In a pair of new developments, recordings of fire dispatch operators reported in the New York Daily News show that an ambulance being sent to the scene to treat Zimmerman was cancelled, with a Martin family spokesman suggesting there's no way that ambulance would be cancelled if Zimmerman had just endured a life or death beating at the hands of Martin, as his story claims. Additionally, two audio experts say screams for help recorded on 911 tapes are not those of Zimmerman.
So you think he's yelling help?
yes,
All right, what is your phone number?
there's gunshots.
Zimmerman has told police, and his family have said, that it is him calling for help. Indeed, it is one of their strongest points of defence. His brother going so far as to say he knows the voice because it sounds like his own. But voice analysts working for the Orlando Sentinel say the screams do not match recordings of Zimmerman's voice. With no recordings of Trayvon Martin's voice that we know of, the experts say they cannot exactly determine with certainty who was screaming. But Trayvon's parents insist that these were their son's last words recorded on tape. Today, they're expected to send a formal letter to the Justice Department calling for an investigation into the prosecutor who overruled a request to charge Zimmerman with manslaughter. Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, told the Grio's Joyanne Reid she's hopeful justice and God will be on their side.
I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is in control. That's what keeps me moving every day, what keeps me moving forward, and for me to understand what I really have to do. I'm doing this for God, I'm doing this for Trayvon. So it just makes me press forward to know that we have to get justice for my son so that his death is not in vain.
And I'm joined now by MSNBC contributor Joyanne Reid, managing editor of thegrio.com, just back from Sanford, as well as MSNBC political analyst Michael Eric Dyson, professor at Georgetown University, with us from Washington. Joyanne, how significant, in your view, is this analysis of the tape and the news that a second ambulance was somehow not required for a man who allegedly had had his head smashed into the concrete and had suffered a broken nose?
Well, Martin, I think both are critical because George Zimmerman's defense, at least as being put forward by his surrogates, by his father, his brother, and his friend Joe Oliver, it hinges on the idea that he was receiving this life or death beating from Trayvon Martin, and that in their words, had he not shot Trayvon Martin, that Trayvon Martin would have either gotten his gun or beaten him to death. And so far, the available physical evidence doesn't seem to support that. And the one thing they can sort of hang their hat on is the idea that he told the initial officer, Officer Smith, he cried for help and no one came. And that if the voice on that recording is his, that corroborates his side of the story. If it isn't, That's a problem, because you also have another witness that was interviewed on another network who said that they believe the man on top was the bigger man and was may have been the Hispanic man, who would be George Zimmerman, who walked away from the shooting.
Right. Professor Dyson, you've heard the suggestion that this is no longer a pursuit for truth and justice, but somehow a battle between two television networks. You've heard my colleague, the Reverend Al Sharpton, accused of whipping up racial tensions in Florida. What's your response?
Well, having written 2 books on Martin Luther King Jr., the same claims were made against him. Everywhere Dr. King went to spread the light of justice in the darkness of injustice, people claimed he was an outsider, an interloper, a person who was creating havoc. They said, our blacks are doing fine. Don't come down here and mess with us. Whites and blacks get along. So Reverend Al Sharpton is facing the classic denial of responsibility of local officials and local communities for the hateful expressions of anti-black racism that exists in this country and that circulate pretty broadly within the justice system as well.
And
so Reverend Al Sharpton is...
Speaking to your point, race is a key factor here. And the New York Times on Sunday ran a study showing Latinos actually report higher negative feelings towards blacks than most native-born whites, nearly 60% saying that few or almost no blacks are hard-working or can be trusted, while only 10% of whites held that view. Now, are those racial tensions, in fact, being underestimated in this case, given the ethnicity of Mr. Zimmerman?
Absolutely. It was ludicrous from the beginning for people to dismiss the possibility of racism because Mr. Zimmerman had Latino blood or was Hispanic. The reality is, as the study you've shown suggests, people who come from outside of this country who don't have much experience with African-American people imbibe and internalize the same sort of hateful stereotypes that prevail not only in America but around the globe. They're being exported daily. So as a result of that, they come to this country with a set of assumptions about black people rooted deeply in their mind. And what you didn't say in that study, of course, is that African-American people ascribe to other Latinos the same hard work ethic that they have themselves. So there's an assumption or a presumption on the part of black people that Latinos are hardworking and willing to do the right thing, whereas Latinos come in with many with a negative viewpoint, having internalized the stereotypes that have been sent around the globe about what black people are likely to do. It does create a serious set of tensions that you see flaring up right now.
Right. Joyanne, you interviewed Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon's mother. It was an emotionally difficult interview for her. You were telling me that she had only just been in church. She was heartbroken by the service. Do you know what her response is specifically to the idea that the man who she believes shot her son and killed him unnecessarily is simply walking free?
Well, I mean, what she essentially said, and they're a very religious family. That's one of the things that came away from this. We were at Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, and she was just through, as you said, with the Palm Sunday service, which was dedicated to their family. It was very difficult for the family to get through that service, and we did the interview shortly thereafter. So you can imagine the state that she was in. But what she essentially said when I asked her, well, what would you say to Zimmerman's family, was that, you know, if this happened to anyone's child, to their son, they would be doing what she's doing. And she felt that it was the right thing to do as a Christian woman, in a way, as well as a mom, because she believes that God is in control, as she said. And then in the end, they seemed very hopeful, she and her family, that because they have this faith in their faith, they believe that they will get justice for their son.
Professor Dyson, I was rereading your book at the weekend, Is Bill Cosby Right? And I was considering this argument that's going on about whether there are personal examples of failings by individual African Americans or whether there are systemic structural problems. I want to quote from your book. This is what you say about Bill Cosby. His discounting of structural forces and his exclusive focus on personal responsibility and black self-help ignore the persistence of institutional racism. Now, I have to ask you, is this case of Trayvon Martin not an example of where institutional racism appears to be emerging within the very criminal justice system that's supposed to serve and protect young people?
Without question, Martin, I think it's a very powerful point that you're making here. That is an institutional problem. That is, it's not individuals. It's not whether Trayvon was wearing a hoodie or not. It's not whether he could be, seen as a person who was suspicious. The institution of justice itself has been warped by the perception and stereotype of black people. A study from Duke University suggested that white people, much more than black people, do drugs, and yet black people are disproportionately concentrated in the criminal justice system for nonviolent drug offenses. So when you look at the relationship between stereotypes on the one hand and perceptions and the likelihood that black people will be racially profiled and targeted, the institutional character of the racism is what's a problem here. Not individuals not liking black people, it's the institutional force of the incarceration system, of the justice system, and of the prison industrial complex that continues to provide a barrier for justice for so many millions of African American people.
Professor Michael Eric Dyson and Joy-Ann Reid, thank you again both for your insight and your work on this story. Thank you.